Before Lin-Manuel Miranda took over the planet with Hamilton in 2015, he created the Tony Award-winning musical In the Heights during the mid-2000s. While that show never quite reached the heights of Hamilton's success, it certainly gave Miranda the ability to continue infusing music with socially aware content on a global stage. The astronomical success of Hamilton has also brought more awareness to Miranda's previous work, hence us now getting a cinematic version of In the Heights. Does it live up to the recorded Broadway version of Hamilton released last year? Let's find out. Thank you so much for checking out the review. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. In the Heights desperately wants to be loved. It does a lot of things in pursuit of that precise goal. It's upbeat, confident, and energetic filmmaking that knows exactly what it wants to achieve. Unlike Hamilton, this is a live-action version of the play, filmed throughout the titular Washington Heights instead of in front of a theatrical audience. The story follows a handful of Dominicans living in Manhattan as they pursue their various versions of the American dream. Anchored by a great performance from Anthony Ramos as the hardworking convenience store worker Usnavi, the cast sings, dances, and emotes with all the energy they can muster. Despite occasionally feeling like an extremely well-produced 2.5-hour-long commercial, the movie is largely successful in telling its story. Usnavi has saved enough money to buy and salvage the bar his father left behind in the Dominican Republic. Nina wants to find her own way forward after dropping out of Stanford, and Vanessa wants to pursue her dreams as a fashion designer. While the acting, performances, and relationships between characters are purposefully fantastical, the individual stories turn out to be largely unimaginative. You'd be hard-pressed to find an original bone in the story that makes up the bulk of the narrative, which is a real shame. In an effort to engage in some political hand-wringing, which is a very 2021 thing to do, In the Heights injects a heavy dose of wokeism that it was certainly not present in the stage version. Yes, there's bound to be some political commentary in a movie about immigration, but this particular story is heavy-handed to an absurd degree. There's an entire subplot dedicated to DACA, which wasn't even a concept in 2005, and it's just as forced as you could possibly imagine. Instead of feeling like an original story, In the Heights too often feels like a handful of washed-up ideas thrown into a pot, stirred up, and then dashed with a helping of Hollywood movie-making magic. It's easy to knock on the film for its recycled ideas, but the movie is so well made and so well acted that the negatives are largely outweighed by the positives. That's basically all I have to say about the movie itself, but it's impossible to talk about In the Heights without addressing some of the batshit crazy criticisms the movie has received. Let me preface this next segment by saying that this is not a political channel. My goal is to always do my best to review movies through an apolitical lens, but sometimes the discussion around a particular film becomes so ridiculous that I feel compelled to address it in some fashion. When Hamilton eventually found its way onto Disney Plus in 2020, Lin-Manuel Miranda found it necessary to apologize due to the fact that a movie that was filled with an entirely minority cast wasn't woke enough. Because Hamilton wasn't a movie specifically about the evils of slavery, it wasn't good enough for the pitchfork-carrying mob, and thus should be cancelled. Cut to last month, when this movie was released into theaters and onto HBO Max. While Lin-Manuel Miranda has a small part in the film, he's the guy largely responsible for bringing In the Heights to life. He created the original condensed story that was expanded into a full-length Broadway musical, and he wrote all the music and lyrics. So when the mob decided to mobilize itself again, he found himself apologizing again to the crazies. While the wokeness of the musical isn't necessarily my thing, I understand its contribution to the story and can appreciate everything the film does well, even if I think the message feels forced. This is not complicated. It's possible to enjoy a film even if it says some things that you disagree with. Lin-Manuel Miranda has nothing to apologize for, which makes his groveling that much more exhausting. He apologized for Hamilton for no reason. And within a year, he's apologizing again for something that, again, requires no condemnation whatsoever. In the Heights tells the story it wants to tell, and the excellent cast and crew shouldn't be condemned by activists for making a movie that doesn't represent the people they want it to represent. The activists who are upset didn't make this movie. They spent nothing, invested nothing, risked nothing, and are therefore owed absolutely nothing. Do I think that In the Heights is some cinematic masterpiece? No, I don't. But it's an entertaining and enjoyable musical romp that pays homage to the American dream while looking and sounding spectacular. Thank you so much for checking out the review. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please consider subscribing. You can also like and share the video since that tells YouTube it's worth promoting. Hit me up down in the comments, let me know what you think of In the Heights, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.